At least 8 cable theft suspects have been arrested in the Johannesburg CBD this week. Authorities say they were found with stolen cable to the value of R1 million. Of course, this isn't the first time we're seeing such cases. So what impact does this theft have on our economy? Well, let's discuss this now with the City of Johannesburg's Environment and Infrastructure MMC Makanda and the spokesperson for the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Andiswa Makanda. They both join us now via Zoom. A very good morning to you, MMC and Andiswa, and thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Andiswa, I'm going to start with you. Just the effect of the cable theft that it's had on PRASA, which already PRASA is trying so much to deal with its already existing issues, which are now being compounded by the theft of cables. I mean, how bad is it on the rail agency? Andy, so just sorry, it seems like you've got yourself muted so we can see you speaking.
Good morning, Morena. Good morning to your viewers. Good morning, MMC Makanda. Thank you for having us. I think the devastation caused by cable theft on our rail network is felt throughout the country. It's really mainly felt by the poor of the poor because we are unable to run train services. And I'm sure you've heard and seen on social media and other places people asking for the trains to come back. But the reality of the matter is because of the theft of cable, we are not able to operate the trains. A majority of our lines in Gauteng, KZN, Eastern Cape are not operational because of cable theft. So the situation is very dire, Morena. It's very sad, and it's the poor of the poor who are mostly affected by this, and our economy, of course.
It's the poor of the poor that are being affected, MMC, and it's the poor of the poor who themselves contribute to the City of Johannesburg economy and, in the bigger scheme, to the national economy. 8 suspects being arrested this week alone, but we know that there are more suspects out there who are committing this crime. There are more suspects who've been arrested in times gone by. What exactly is the COJ doing? What is the Environment and Infrastructure Department doing to ensure that we're not just getting only 8 suspects, but we're getting these syndicates that are being brought to book?
Also, a very good morning from my side, Morena, also to your viewers and to Andiswa. It is certainly a major concern for the City of Johannesburg. We speak of cable thieves, but I think it's time that we now need to identify. It's not just the thieves that are working, but a whole array of syndicates. As you can see from my Twitter yesterday, it's those people that transport the stolen copper cables are going back to the cable thieves, the actual people that would go damage infrastructure in order to gain cables, fuses, other metals or whatever, resources they can sell for money. Then, of course, you've got the wholesalers that buy the scrap metal. Then, yesterday I heard that, a substantial amount of scrap metal get exported out of our country's borders. And the question lies at where do these metals go? Certainly, we need to have a much more strategic plan to deal with this kind of cable crime. What we've done is that, of course, internally at City Power, we've intensified our security efforts to ensure that we protect our infrastructure better. That is to enhance the security deployment. We'll be very soon be installing CCTV cameras and alarm systems at hotspots. But all this, of course, is, it's costing us money. But I think the financial loss suffered by our businesses and residents are much, much more. But even more of that, we've now engaged with the local CPFs. We've engaged with the community petroleer groups to ensure that we have a better working relationship in protecting our infrastructure. Another very positive news is that this week, the Executive Mayor of City of Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho, led her team together with myself included. We met with the Gauteng Provincial SAPS Commissioner, Juno Mawela, and it was a very fruitful meeting. One of the issues we discussed at length was the enforcement of the Second-Hand Goods Act by the police. As you could understand that, many second-hand goods dealers out there possess a license issued by SAPS but then they are not regulated, they are not being checked on regularly, and that now creates a breeding bed for a lot of criminal activities, especially in the illicit dealing of stolen cables.
Andiswa, is there anything more that PRASA can do, to deal with the issues it's facing, or is it already overwhelmed by the issues it already is facing, that cable theft becomes something else that is just beyond its reach, and it needs that assistance from the city of Johannesburg, national government? Is there anything more that you guys can stretch yourselves to ensure that you do to deal with cable theft? Because as you've mentioned, it affects the poorest of the poor.
As you rightly point, Morena, the situation is very dire, and the amount of rail network that needs to be protected is a vast amount of network, and we are doing all that we can to make sure that we deploy security in all this kilometer stretch of our rail network, so that we protect the rail infrastructure, we protect the overhead cables from thieves. But the reality of the matter is that these criminals are very organized. They know what they're doing. It's more like a syndicate that's operating. So it will require a joint effort with the law enforcement agencies, with the city of Joburg, in fact, with the different municipalities, so that we can all come together, because it's not just a PRASA issue. It's most entities that are affected by cable theft. It's Telkom, it's Eskom, it's Transnet. So it's a whole host of companies and entities that are affected by cable theft. So it needs joint efforts, but also it needs a wider conversation around scrap metal industry, how we regulate the scrap metal industry, because a lot of the cables end up in the scrap metal industry, shipped off to other countries, and the price of copper, it's a very lucrative industry. And so there is sort of like an incentive to continue stealing our copper. I know that for us with PRASA, we have tried to decrease the incentive to steal our cables. For instance, we're using less aluminium because that's where the commodity is as well. So there's so much, there's a lot that we can do as PRASA in terms of technology that we use to make copper, in fact, to make our overhead and our infrastructure less attractive to criminals. However, I think there's a wider conversation that needs to be done. There's a lot that needs to be done in terms of the scrap metal industry, how it's regulated, what it is that we do. We are working jointly with the SAPS. They've been very great in assisting us to nab criminals. However, more needs to be done.
MMC, this is obviously to the tune of some hundreds of millions, if not billions of rands, impact on the economy. What kinds of monies are we talking in terms of cable theft and the impact it has on not perhaps just the local government economy, but maybe, if you have insight into it, even the national economy? How heavy is cable theft?
Morena, if I could just use the example of the criminal syndicate we busted yesterday. The street value of those scrap copper cables is worth about R1 million. But if you look at the actual cost that City Power has to go, or anybody, PRASA or Telkom, has to go and replace those stolen cables, I can assure you it will run into hundreds of millions of rand. And that is excluding the actual economic loss our residents and businesses have to suffer. Starting on the very basic inconvenience, our residents often have to throw food out of their fridges because days of outages caused by cable theft. The city of Johannesburg alone suffered about 6.7 billion rand in non-technical losses, which we term is, that's a loss that we suffer as a result of stolen electricity, damaged infrastructure, and cable theft form part of that cost. And another figure I want to share with you and the viewers is that the City Power spends 100 million rand a year in protecting its infrastructure. So there are all these associated costs that the city suffers, and of course, ultimately, our residents suffer in the crime of cable theft. It's very interesting that we hear Prasa says they're also working with the police, but I certainly am encouraged that I think a wider conversation must be held, that we all put our resources on the table to ensure that we not only fight this alone in our silos, but we need to all get together, united to fight this capable crime. And I certainly want to give a big shout out there to the community members have now gathered themselves to ensure that they go patrol at night, to protect the infrastructure. We're not sitting back. Within the next 2 weeks, we'll be rolling out a program where we go visit and assist those community groups to ensure that they are not only being given support verbally, but they are given actual support, such as torches, reflector jackets, so that we can all together fight this crime of cable theft.
Andiswa, it's well known that trains in this country need some attention. Needs some, we could call it upgrades. The rail infrastructure in this country itself needs some upgrades. And then, of course, we are now talking about cable theft, which is now setting back Plaza a couple of steps. The impact, the financial impact on Plaza that cable theft has. I mean, if we can even just look at it from just the past financial year, what heavy impact were you guys looking at?
Morena, it's a huge financial burden. It's a huge financial cost. We're looking at billions of rands. I think in the last statement, it was 4 billion rand that we'd lost from because of cable theft. And, the picture keeps changing. And part of the problem that we're also facing, Morena, is that you fix or you replace the stolen cable. The thieves are back. The criminals come back. You deploy at a so-called hotspot. Your criminals get there. In fact, they move to another different spot. So it's almost like playing cops and robbers. I don't know, like cat and mouse. We're constantly chasing, and they're always 10 steps ahead of us. We bring in intelligence, to come and assist. And, to what MMC sign also says, that the communities also assist. They're able to blow the whistle or to alert the police when they see movement within the rail network, when the criminals do come. However, it's just huge. The losses we've incurred because of the cable theft. We are not able to run services, and therefore we have not even been able to generate revenue. So it is a catch-22 situation. It is a dire situation. We need to get to the point where we can generate income, generate revenue, so that we can constantly upgrade our services, increase and bring more train services online. However, we find ourselves always playing catch-up because you replace here, you fix here, the criminals are back. You move to a particular hotspot, they move to the next hotspot. So we are constantly a couple of steps back behind the criminals.
Guys, I suppose this is a conversation that needs to always keep happening, so as we get the necessary authorities to jump on board and to intensify, their attention on this issue, because it is, as Andiswa was mentioning, costing in the regions of 4 billion rands. You're mentioning MMC Sun, that is, it's the theft of a copper cable that is worth 100 million rands, but is costing the replacement in the regions of hundreds of millions of rands. So I suppose this is the kind of conversation that needs to keep happening. But unfortunately, time today for us is now over. But I do appreciate yours, MMC, of course, Environment and Infrastructure, Michael Sun, you're joining us today, as well as the Passenger Rail and Agency of South Africa's spokesperson, Andiswa Makanda. Thank you very much for your time this morning.